The place of Sunnah in Islam. People who have not studied the theology of Islam as expounded in orthodox treatises believe that Islam stands for obedience to the commandments of Allah as revealed in the Quran. They do not know that Allah is no more than mere window dressing and that for all practical purposes the Prophet rules the roost. Muhammad had made Allah into his private preserve when he proclaimed that no one except him knew the will of Allah firsthand, and that he alone will intercede on the day of judgment for deciding who will enter paradise and who will sink into hell. Going further, he made Allah helplessly dependent on the Muslim millat when he prayed on the eve of the Battle of Badr, "O God, if this band perishes today, thou will be worshipped no more." This became a refrain in every Muslim prayer offered on the eve of every battle fought against the infidels in the history of Islam. Allama Iqbal was not innovating when he addressed Allah in his shikwa and asked, "Did anyone before us bother about you?" Muslims have a popular saying in the Persian language, "Ba khuda diwana bash wa ba Muhammad hoshyar." That is, one may become wild about Allah, but one should beware when it comes to Muhammad. Khuda is the Persian word for Allah. Islam is therefore spelled out more correctly when it is called Muhammadanism. For it is not Allah but Muhammad who sits at the heart of Islam and controls its head as well. Sits at its heart and controls its head as well. The process of deifying the lifestyle of the Prophet had started in his own lifetime. Margouliouth observes, quote-unquote, "He inherited the devotion and adulation which had hitherto been bestowed on the idols, and though he never permitted the word worship to be used for the ceremonies of which he was the object, he ere long became hedged in with a state which differed little from that which surrounded a god. The concept of the Sunnah, that is, the practices of the Prophet, had also developed towards the end of his days. The very first Sufi illustrated what the Sunnah entailed. Faridu'd-Din Attar gives the story of Uwais Qarni, 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 who lived in the days of the Prophet but had never met or seen him. Umar and Ali were on a visit to Kufa when they learned that Qarni lived in the valley of Urfa, grazing cattle and eating dry bread. They went to see him. The Honorable Uwais said, "You are companions of the Prophet. Could you tell me which one of his sacred teeth was martyred in the battle of Uhud? Why have you not broken all your teeth out of reverence for the Prophet?" This said, he opened his mouth and showed that all his teeth were gone. He explained, "When I learned that a tooth of the Prophet had been martyred, I broke one of mine. Then I thought that perhaps some other tooth of his had been martyred, so I broke all my teeth, one after another. It is only after that I felt peace." Having heard him, the two companions got awestruck and felt convinced that this was the correct conduct. The rightly guided caliphs who followed the Prophet regarded the Sunnah as a sure key to success. Works of history which gave many victories to the Muslim arms in the 1st century AH convinced the theologians of Islam that the Sunnah was divine in its inspiration. They became busy in collecting and collating every detail of the Prophet's practices, from the act of cuffing to that of waging holy wars and administering what had become his exclusive kingdom. The Sunnah was placed on par with the Quran. Quote-unquote, in the Quran, they propounded, Allah speaks through Muhammad. In the Sunnah, he acts through him. Thus, Muhammad's life is a visible expression of Allah's utterances in the Quran. God provides the divine principle, Muhammad the living pattern. The Sunnah has been the prison house in which the world of Islam has lived ever since. Every pious Muslim aspires to do things exactly as the Prophet did. Aping the Prophet in the matter of destroying other people's places of worship and building mosques with their materials is no exception. A Muslim who can do this pious deed but does not do it disobeys the Prophet. There are very few historical mosques, particularly Jama masjids in the world of Islam, which do not stand on sites occupied earlier by other people's places of worship. Many Christian churches yielded place to mosques all over West Asia, North Africa, Spain and Southeastern Europe, even though Christians were people of the book whose places of worship were to be protected once they agreed to become zimmis. First temples of the Zoroastrians were suffered the same fate all over what constituted the empire of Iran on the eve of Muslim conquest, and that is when Zoroastrians came to India, became Parsis, and now they are seculars who hate Hinduism. The greatest havoc, however, was wrought in the vast cradle of Hindu culture, where hundreds of thousands of Buddhist, Brahmanical, Jain and other Hindu temples disappeared or yielded place to mosques and other Muslim monuments. Today there are no Hindu temples in the Central Asian republics of Russia, Xinjiang province of China, Makran and Sistan provinces of Iran, and the whole of Afghanistan, all of which were honeycombed with them before the advent of Islam. Whatever Hindu temples had come up during the Sikh and British rule in what are now known as Pakistan and Bangladesh are fast disappearing. The same has been happening in the Valley of Kashmir. The Archaeological Survey of India, which included Pakistan and Bangladesh till 1947, has identified many mosques and other Muslim monuments which stand on the sites of Hindu temples and or have temple materials embedded in their masonry. Many inscriptions in Arabic and Persian bear testimony that Hindu temples were destroyed for constructing mosques. Local traditions can point out many more mosques which have replaced Hindu temples. Cartloads of Hindu idols are known to have been brought and placed on the steps of the Jami masjids in several cities which were Muslim capitals at one time. Many of those idols may still be buried under the stairs of some of the same mosques. In short, the study of Islamic iconoclasm in this country, not to speak of the whole cradle of Hindu culture, has yet to make a meaningful start. What we have proved beyond doubt is that destroying other people's places of worship and converting them into Muslim monuments is not only sanctioned but also prescribed by the tenets of Islam. The same way was as reciting the kalima, doing namaz, paying zakat, keeping roza, and going on hajj. Anyone who says that Islam does not permit this practice is either ignorant of the creed or has been deceived by Islamic apologetics developed in recent time. If a Muslim scholar or politician makes this statement, he is talking tongue-in-cheek and stands exposed as a knave.